Breaking news from Juba Global News Network. Please stay tuned for more details.
Deep concerns are mounting over what many describe as the growing weaponization of South Sudan's judiciary along tribal lines. Leaked information suggests that the prosecutorial process in the case against opposition leader Dr. Riek Machar is being heavily influenced by powerful individuals close to the presidency. According to sources, the appointed prosecutor Sarah Peter Nyat Koch, the wife of businessman Bol Mel and cousin to Minister Honorable Joseph Gungakek, was selected under questionable circumstances. Bol Mel, known to be a key figure opposing Dr. Riek, is alleged to wield enormous influence over the judiciary and the presidency. The Chief Justice, himself a Dinka from Warrap State, the president's home region, was appointed under Bol Mel's influence. The Minister of Justice, also from a Wheel and a close ally of Bol Mel, is reportedly positioned to advance what critics call tribal justice. A leaked document alleges that Minister Joseph Gungakek is set to receive $30 million through a Dubai bank transfer in exchange for ensuring charges against Dr. Riek proceed. These revelations have fueled widespread belief that the outcome of the trial has already been predetermined, undermining the credibility of the judicial process. Bol Mel is the judge, prosecutor, and implementing authority, while the president is the ultimate appointing power with vested interests in weakening Dr. Riek Machar, one political analyst told reporters. This has intensified public frustration that South Sudan's courts are no longer impartial institutions, but instruments of political and tribal dominance. Many argue that what is unfolding is not justice, but a clique of Dinka leaders in power prosecuting newer leaders for political survival. Despite this grim picture, observers note that the wider Dinka population does not share animosity toward Dr. Riek Machar or the newer community. Instead, blame is increasingly directed toward a handful of individuals consolidating power through tribalism and patronage. The growing perception is stark. Justice in South Sudan has been consumed by tribalism, and the nation itself is slipping further from the rule of law.
Breaking news out of South Sudan tonight. A dramatic twist in the country's fragile peace process. First Vice President Riek Machar, one of the most powerful men in the nation, has been suspended from office and charged with treason, murder, and crimes against humanity. The announcement came in a late-night decree read on state television by President Salva Kiir. The order also suspended Petroleum Minister Puat Kang Chul, both officials accused of ties to a deadly White Army militia attack in Upper Nile State back in March that left more than 250 soldiers dead. Justice Minister Joseph Gungakek says Machar and 7 allies face charges ranging from conspiracy and terrorism to the desecration of corpses, persecution of civilians, and attacks on humanitarian workers. Machar, who also leads the opposition SPLMIO party, has been under house arrest since March 26th. Observers say his suspension could further destabilize the peace agreement he signed with Kiir in 2018 to end a brutal 5-year civil war. Legal experts are divided. Some argue the suspension is constitutional, as officials must have immunity lifted before trial. Others warn the 2018 peace deal does not grant the president authority to remove the first vice president, Dr. Riek Machar, raising fears this could trigger a fresh political crisis.
The SPLM-IO waged a surprise attack against the South Sudanese People Defense Forces, and in that attack, 7 South Sudanese People Defense Forces troops lost their lives. Well, these assaults took place around 5 a.m. in Monubu village, approximately just 8 miles from Maridi town along the road to Mambe. Well, according to Alfred Miri, the Maridi County Commissioner, the SPLA-IO fighters stormed an SSPDF barracks that had been established recently in the area. Well, it is important to note that this unit, the South Sudanese People Defense Forces unit that was attacked by the SPLA-IO forces, were deployed just days earlier to patrol the Maridi-Juba road following repeated security incidents. The troops were caught by surprise, and the attack marks a renewed escalation of insecurity in Maridi County, which has experienced intermittent clashes between government and opposition SPLA-IO forces. Well, this comes amid a broader impasse over the implementation of the 2018 peace agreement, the so-called revitalized agreement of South Sudan that was reached in 2018 to stop the civil war that was ongoing in the country, where the government forces were fighting against the opposition forces. These renewed clashes that we are seeing right now in South Sudan are as a result of the house arrest of the first vice president and the leader of the SPLA-IO forces, Riek Machar, that was orchestrated by the government of the day in the month of March. Since then, we've not heard about anything from Dr. Riek Machar, and the forces, the SPLA-IO forces, are now reacting to the silence that has been given by the government and the action by the government to go ahead and hold the first vice president under house arrest. And that is not all, because the government of the day has gone further to demote leaders that were appointed by the first vice president, Riek Machar, and the government has appointed its own leaders, including the governors. Now, it was signed in that revitalized agreement that there will be a quota of the governors that will be appointed by Dr. Riek Machar's party, as well as there will be a quota that will be appointed by the government of the day. Now, all that is being put aside as the government of the day is taking charge of all the appointments, as well as working with factions that are said to come out of SPLA-IO, as well as the SPLM-IO, and now they are forming their own coalitions that are now colluding with the government. But many are saying that the faction that is led by Stephen Parkour is not the original SPLM-IO that is supposed to be working with the government. And that is why we are seeing that despite the announcements, the appointments, and the coalition and working together of Stephen Parkour's party with the government of the day, still there are some clashes in different parts of South Sudan waged by the SPLA-IO forces who are loyal to the first vice president, Riek Machar. And mind you, in this 2018 peace agreement, both of these parties were to unify their forces to make one South Sudanese People Defense Forces to be a national army that doesn't have an outfit of either the people in government or the people in opposition. But that seems to be far from being achieved, because right now the factions are very, very much alive. And we can see the SPLA-IO forces fighting brutally against the South Sudanese People Defense Forces, now leading to deaths of the South Sudanese People Defense Forces. This is not an isolated case, because just days ago we were talking about another incident that happened in Upper Nile, where more South Sudanese People Defense Forces were attacked by the SPLA-IO and they lost their lives. These are serious moves and operations that are being conducted by both parties against each other at a time when the country is in heightened tensions politically and also militarily, to avoid yet another civil war from erupting in South Sudan. And mind you, this unification of the forces was supposed to usher in a general election in South Sudan. South Sudan has never gone through a general election in the country to elect its own leaders, and this was the moment that the country was supposed to start preparing for the 2026 elections. But this seems far to be achieved because of the ongoing political crisis in the country. The country is literally split into two, between people who are supporting the government and those who are supporting the opposition. In fact, there are some militia who are supporting both sides. Talk about the Agwelek, talk about the White Army, who are armed and are supporting different sides in the country, and they are actively fighting against each other. Now, just recently, allies very close to the first vice president wrote to the United States urging President Donald Trump to appoint an individual to overlook the cases of South Sudan and Sudan, mentioning that both of these countries are facing similar crises and that they should all be addressed the same. Because right now, we're also privy to the information that there are some fighters from South Sudan who are assisting the RSF. And of course, there are also people who are also assisting the Sudanese army. And this is vice versa. There are some collusions between the forces that are in Sudan and the forces that are in South Sudan.